Art has the ability to capture a moment, to tell us a story, and bring us to a different time and place. Through different forms of expression, the American story can be shared and give us a look into our past and present. We'll take a look at art and learn some of these stories with Mark, our Senior Curator of Art and History.
And I thought we'd start today with one of the earliest Indiana artists. This is a painting by Granville Bishop. It would have been done around 1850. And as you can see, it's in a very primitive style. Bishop was an itinerant artist. That means he traveled from place to place looking for work, looking for patrons that would buy his work. And this gentleman right here, Charles Seward, actually hired Bishop to paint his farm. Again, he was an artist that was hired to do a specific project. The owner here wanted to highlight, in this case, his prize steer, his award-winning horse, his property in the background, his family. And this would have been typical of the type of work that an itinerant artist was doing. This is a painting by Jacob Cox. This was done in about 1870. Jacob Cox was considered the first professional artist in Indianapolis. So as you can see that this one is a much more refined piece. There's nothing primitive about it. You can see it's very luminous in the background. The perspective is right. It's got a figure in the foreground here. And it's actually just a really beautiful painting. It tells the visual story of what Indiana looked like at a particular time. And you'll see that's true as we move through the collection and look at other examples. I thought I'd talk about a group of artists who were working here in the late 1800s and early 1900s. The Hoosier group is probably the best known artists of this particular period. It consisted of 5 artists with Indiana roots. Probably the best known of the group is T.C. Steele. Steele was born in Gosport, Indiana, and went on to be one of the most revered American Impressionists of the early 20th century. So as you look behind us here, you can see that all these paintings are in what we'd call an impressionistic style, meaning the paint's heavily layered, almost to the point in some cases of being abstract. He painted outside at all times during the year. So here we have a scene that would have been a late spring or early summer image. And then right above it, you see a different palette altogether. He's using the browns and the umbers and the ochres and the other colors to capture that particular scene. We also have a piece here of a winter scene. One of Steele's strengths was that he could paint at all times of the year, all times of the day, and he became actually very famous for doing these types of work, and the work is very much in demand. So there's a big transition from the earlier artists that we spoke about to a group that settled in central Indiana, had studios, had patrons that were buying their work, and were very successful. So I mentioned that Steele was working down in southern Indiana, and one of the artists that was prominent at that time was Leota Loop. And as you can see, it's in the impressionistic style. Leota Loop not only did landscape, but she's also known for her still lifes, and she was also a teacher. And I think it's important to recognize that as we head into the early 20th century, women became more prominent in the art world. And Leota Loop is a perfect example of that. The Brown County Art Colony is well recognized for being a hub of artists and craftsmen. To this day, you can go to Brown County and see the work. But during this particular time, it was a place where artists not only from Indiana went, but artists from Chicago, from different parts of the country would come because of the beautiful landscape and the collection of artists that existed there at the time. So I'd like to share a couple pieces by another Indianapolis-based artist, Harry Davis. And not only was he a gifted artist who did architectural renderings of various historic buildings in Indianapolis and actually all across Indiana, but he was also a highly respected teacher. Harry represents the growth of the art schools in Indiana. Prior to 1900, there were just a handful, very small art schools that existed. By the turn of the early 20th century, they started to proliferate. And Harry is somebody who dedicated his life to teaching. So he was a successful educator, a successful artist, and on top of that, they're just really beautiful paintings. So from Harry, we're going to move a little bit later on. As on these racks right here, mostly filled with our contemporary art collection. But as you get into the contemporary work, like the rest of society, the techniques change. Materials that are available now that weren't available years ago, artists are using those. So we have paintings, we have photography, we have mixed media works, we have textiles. We have all these different types of work that represent what artists are working with and the technology of the day. So now I'll share another piece of our contemporary art collection. This is a painting by the African-American artist Wayne Manns out of Bloomington, Indiana. And it's his take on another very famous painting, Washington Crossing the Delaware. Only in this particular piece, he substituted other known figures for Washington and the other people that were with him at the time. We have Barack Obama standing front and center. We have Oprah Winfrey behind him holding the American flag. We have Bruce Springsteen down here playing his guitar, Stevie Wonder over here, and Hillary Rodham Clinton. So I've given you a rare glimpse of behind-the-scenes tour of the fine art collection. We have works from the early 1800s all the way up to current times, and then we'll continue to collect in the future.